Nothing contained in this podcast should be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. This content does not represent our respective employers and is purely the opinion of the podcast hosts. We are not your personal medical providers. Sorry, friends. So, if you have concerns or seeking a diagnosis or treatment, please seek individual advice from a healthcare provider in your area. We are not liable for any risks associated with acting upon the information contained in this podcast. This is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only, so enjoy the ride.
Please drink responsibly and in moderation. Before drinking, please be sure to be of the legal drinking age for your country. We do not encourage the misuse of alcohol.
Welcome to Medical Media Mixer, the perfect cocktail. I'm Nicole Peniston, psychologist.
And I'm Tara Prisco, physician assistant. Don't worry, we'll cut out that large pause.
What day.
I see you suffering the plague of allergies that I'm suffering. It feels like...
Not really. I think it was more, I was like running around and doing a lot of stuff. And so it was just...
I want to rip my eyeballs out today. But the problem is when I wear glasses with these headphones, they hurt.
Yeah.
And I find myself having to keep doing like pulling on my headphones all episodes. So I was like, I'm just going to leave the contacts in for the rest of the night, even though I just want to rip them off my face.
That's fair.
For those listeners, it is late April, peak allergy season.
Yeah. Is it peak allergy season? I feel like with the weather up and down, who knows? Peak allergy season could be in 3 weeks for all we know.
According to what I'm seeing in work and in my own household.
Yeah.
I know it's honestly, peak, but it's not great.
Yeah, mine have not, knock on wood, been terrible. I've had some really bad allergy seasons, so this one's been manageable.
Yeah.
So
I don't
hopefully
know,
it stays that way.
I woke up today and every time I go out, like I woke up, put in my contacts, life is good. Go out to the car and as I'm driving to work, all of a sudden my eyes are, and I'm like, I guess it's because I went outside and then in the car.
Yeah.
And then I got into work and it calmed down throughout the day. And then I leave work and I get in the car
outside.
And it's like, just keep me in an insulated, like air conditioned bubble.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
Well, and then there's allergens in the air conditioning too.
There are,
so.
yeah. But you know, I mean, we have more filters here. So those who are anticipating us talking about our book con, we had book con. It was
did, and we forgot to record there.
Yeah, we didn't. We did the same thing with Comic-Con. We got to into
we got to be better about that.
And Nicole accidentally ran into Chloe Gong, the author. And
I did.
I just finished the first book last night and started the second one last night.
Wasn't it so good?
Yes.
It's so stinking good. Yeah. Yeah. I was like a third of the way through the second book and then I forgot where I was. So I was starting over from the beginning, which was fine because it's delightful. But then I realized I had like 4 books that I had started. So I was like, let me finish the ones I started. So I'm on the last book that I started. So as soon as I finish that, then I'm returning to, it is The Vilest Things. It's the second one, I think. Yeah. So I will be.
And then we just added a million things to our to be read list while we were there.
We did.
We met a couple little bookshops and authors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were saying it's a little heavy on the romanticy. A little heavy.
Did you fill out the survey about that?
I did. And I did write that. I did. Yeah, like, you know, I just want a little representation to a little everything. Give me a little thriller. Give me a little mystery. Give me a little historical fiction. Give me something.
Throw a biography at me. I'll look at it. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it was fun. It's exhausting, but it was fun.
Yeah. We walked, I think I clocked like 5 miles or something on my watch. I don't know.
Sounds about right. Yeah. But yeah, by the time I got home, I was like so tired. Like, have you ever been so tired that like then you can't sleep?
Yeah.
That's what happened. Where it's my body was so tired, but like my mind couldn't slow down.
Yeah.
So, but I survived it.
We survived.
Yes, we did. And then this past weekend, I did some fun stuff I wanted to tell you about. I went with Deb to the Serial Killer Speakeasy, which was delightful. I highly recommend it. They go all over the country, so our listeners may be able to partake. Just keep an eye out for when they're near your city. But definitely worth it. It's like an hour-and-a-half show, and they break it into 4 monologues about 4 particular serial killers. I'm not going to say which ones I saw, just in case they do the same ones every time. But and then they pair each story with a cocktail. And I will say, those cocktails, they were not skimping on the alcohol. And for the price of admission, plus like a really delightful show, plus the 4 cocktails, it was a steal. So I highly recommend Serial Killer Speakeasy for everybody out there. Deb really enjoyed it.
Same people who do the other ones, like they did the
I don't
Edgar
think
Allan Poe,
so.
or no?
I think it's the same company, but a different cast because these people said they travel specifically around the country and do this show. So they were really good. And that was on Saturday. We did some day drinking on Saturday. We went to like the 2:00 show.
Nice.
So that was nice. And then yesterday I went with Deb to a place I found on TikTok called Behind the Vine. It's in Union, and you go and you do your little own terrarium or plant.
Cute.
Yeah, you
Nice.
can like paint a planter or make a terrarium. And it was really fun. Just Deb and I went. And it was just the two of us in the studio. We had a lovely time. So I think it would be fun if maybe we could go for like a girls' day or something.
Yeah.
It's BYOB, so you can like bring snacks and drinkies
so
and
like,
have fun.
Like kind of like the paint and sip concept, like the chill.
But with plants.
Yeah. Now you got to keep them alive.
Yeah. Well, my terrarium, I put plants in, but it's like, what's that little like fern that has like the pink splotches on it? It has a specific name. But like that one and like a couple others that are relatively easy to care for. She said water them every 2 weeks. I can do that.
Okay. Yes.
And then they like also sell plants and planters there. And I found this cute little one who it's a little man on a toilet on a cell phone. So I got that and I put a little succulent in it. And now it's in my bathroom downstairs, my guest bathroom. So yeah, it was a fun time. We enjoyed it. It was fun to be creative. And my terrarium is downstairs. It's quite big. It's like I did the premium size, so it's pretty big. And it holds 3 plants. But then you could put like little figurines in. So I have a little frog and a little turtle in mine. And
very cute.
Pink sparkly dust all over it. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I like those little crafty things. It's better than like, like it gives an activity. There's conversation.
Yeah. And it was just the two of us. So like we got a lot of like hands-on attention from the woman who runs the place, but it wasn't like that long an event either. Like if you're looking for just like something like quick and cute to do, we were there maybe 45 minutes and like we weren't rushed. Like we took our time with it.
It was just chill.
But the place is small, so you could probably do like a party of maybe 8 max. So, but it was fun.
That's very cute. Yeah, I like little crafty things.
So maybe we'll link them in the show notes because they are a new business and they are called Behind the Vine. So maybe we can link both of those in case any of our listeners are interested in catching up with those too.
Cool.
Yeah.
What else do we have? I think I did not a whole lot. Well, I did like little things catching up this weekend, but nothing like fun. But that's okay. Sometimes you need a weekend to catch up on life. Right.
Sometimes you need to do like real life stuff like laundry and things.
I saw a movie. I saw the Project Hail Mary movie.
Oh, was it good?
See that? Yes, I liked it. Husband who listened to the audiobook was a little more critical because he listened to it more recently than I read it. So he was more like into the details. And I'm like, you got the vibe. You can't every single thing, especially because the book is very much, it's mostly one person's monologue, internal monologue. So you can't really, show all that and a lot of science. And like, you have to sort of explain that in different ways. So anyway, I enjoyed it. I thought it was very good.
Yes.
Ryan Gosling was excellent. I thought it was adorable. And then there was this alien he meets. This is not a spoiler because it's in like the trailer. And his name is Rocky and he was played perfectly by whatever like CGI, the thing they created. It was very cute.
It was AI. We know that now.
You just disappeared from my screen, but I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
My internet went out like randomly. It's never done that. In a year and a half of podcasting, my internet has never gone out. So it was bound to happen. So hopefully it stays, but it was weird.
I think we'll be all right. Yeah.
So
random.
You were talking about the AI Rocky.
Yeah, he was adorable. He was cute.
Nice.
He's a little creature that looks like a spider made of stones. It's not as creepy as you think. I mean, because he's cute. His personality's cute.
Okay, I'll take it. Sounds good. Oh, and I forgot, the day before BookCon, I went to the Tricky Tray.
Yes.
And there was all sorts of drama.
Oh, yeah. Fights breaking out.
And then my friend Dana, who went with us, I know she listens, so shout out to Dana. She was enthralled by the drama. She can't wait for the next one. So
they get all worked up. They go too fast.
Riled up, or then they go too slow. It's a whole thing. But all the baskets were named after movie titles. And because it just tickled me, I put a lot of tickets in the Mommy Dearest basket. And I won it. And it did include wire hangers.
Yes. Where do you even, I guess you have to go to a dry cleaner? Like, where do you obtain wire hangers?
I think they ordered them like online because when I opened up the gift basket, like they were like separately packaged and there was like a cute little like, thank you for shopping with us in there.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Like, where does one procure that nowadays?
And I don't particularly enjoy wire hangers, but I loved the kitschiness of the basket.
The concept.
Yes. So.
Yeah, very cute.
And I don't know who won the basket that we donated. I don't even know what they named it. It was kind of hidden in the back, but they did that with several alcohol gift baskets this year. So I don't know if people were getting too drunk the years before, and that's why now they're trying to like hide the alcohol. But there were multiple alcohol gift baskets that were kind of like hidden a little bit. It was like, is it a scavenger hunt? Find all the liquor? I don't know what's happening. So, but yeah, we had a good time.
All right. So you're leading the show
I
today.
am, if I can get my
I
shit
know
together.
very little about what you're doing. I just saw kind of like the general subject, but I don't really know anything about anything.
I mean, that's kind of how I live my life.
I'm ready.
I know very little about what I'm doing most days, so.
I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
So I'm going to be talking about 3 separate movies, but they are connected. So the first movie is called Compliance. It was, oh wait, let me do my cocktail.
Yes, we should do that.
Yeah, my web browser was not letting me open the cocktail link, so I have it on my phone. So it is called the Obey, Conform, Consume cocktail. It is 30 milliliters or 1 ounce of Arujo, Orujo. It is like a Spanish brandy.
Okay.
30 milliliters or 1 ounce of cherry juice, and then you top with soda. So it's pretty tasty.
Nice.
It's kind of like an alcoholic cherry Coke. I'm not mad at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
So basically you just put all those ingredients into a glass with ice, and that's it, and drink.
Okay.
Yeah, super easy. So I'm talking, as I said, about 3 things. So the first film I'm talking about is called Compliance. Have you heard of that film?
I don't believe so. I don't know if I've heard of any of the things in your...
Yeah, so it was a thriller. It came out in 2012. And it was starring Ann Dowd, who, if you saw her face, you'd be like, that lady. She always plays like the mom or like the nosy neighbor. She's this poor lady is very typecast, but she's lovely. Drama Walker, where if you watched Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment, whatever it was, she was in that. She was the cute blonde in that.
I do know that.
So she plays the lead character in this film. And the premise of this movie is... it's based on a true story.
I'm just going to say real quick, Ann Dowd is from Handmaid's Tale.
Yes, I was going to say she's been in many a thing.
She's Aunt Lydia.
She is Aunt Lydia, which we have issues with Aunt Lydia, but that's okay.
Well, have you read the Testaments?
No. Does she redeem herself?
I'm not saying.
I mean, I feel like even in Handmaid's Tale, like she has her moments where like you don't always hate her, but...
just read it.
Okay.
Show's coming out.
I mean, Aunt Lydia's very nuanced. I know that already, so...
Yes.
So she is in this, and so she plays Sandra, who is the manager of a fast food restaurant, and she's at work. It's a very busy shift, and she gets a call from someone who says that they're a police officer and that he has talked to the regional manager and is now talking to her because a customer has alleged that one of their employees stole money from her wallet that day. And so then they go about describing an employee in very vague terms. They basically say a young blonde woman around the age of 19 to 21, short, petite, attractive. That's who stole the money. So Sandra identifies Becky, played by Drama Walker, as this supposed thief who's working at the fast food restaurant. Sandra brings Becky back into the office, and they then have this detective on the phone who is instructing Sandra to check Becky's pockets and her purse. They don't find this supposed missing money. And then they said that either the police will swing by and pick up Becky to send her to jail, or Sandra can strip search her.
Right.
And Sandra goes for it.
All right.
So at this whole point, Becky's kind of anxious because she knows that her brother had some involvement with the law. She was not at all involved, but she doesn't have the best opinions of law enforcement based on that. So she's kind of like, she's not happy about it, but she's like, okay, I don't want to go to jail. Like, I'll do what you say.
Right.
So Sandra begins to have Becky remove all of her clothing, and then they take her clothes away. So then she is essentially naked in the back room. They give her like one of those aprons that they're all wearing, to cover herself, but she's essentially naked. And then this just continues to escalate to, at some point, another guy who works there. This is awkward. Sandra's boyfriend drops on by.
Okay.
And Sandra's like, you stay in there with the naked girl. I got stuff to do. At one point, they do try to bring in another male employee, and he won't have anything to do with it. He's like, nuh-uh, no ma'am. I'm not going in there with no naked girl. I'm not getting in trouble. We are not doing that. So the other employee walks out. So she brings her boyfriend in, and she goes back to work because it's a busy shift. Again, I don't know Sandra's mentality in this, but that was her thought process. And so now her boyfriend, whose name is Van, is then told by this person on the phone that he has to make Becky do nude jumping jacks to loosen any concealed items in her body, to touch her, to grope her, to feel for missing items. And then at some points, convinces the man on the phone, convinces Van that if he can get Becky to give him oral sex, that she'll confess to this crime.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is like, what is going on?
So, this goes all the way through. And then another different person, I believe he's a custodian, kind of walks in on this and he's like, what the fuck? Like, he shuts it down. He's like, step away from that girl, like, give her her clothes back, like, whatever you're doing, I don't want to know what it is, but you're going to stop right now. So he's kind of like the hero of the day. He shuts it all down.
Yeah. And
then he calls the regional manager and is like, what is this all about? And the regional manager's like, I don't know what you're talking about. No police officers called me. Mm-hmm. So this was a prank call. And the scary thing is this is a true story. This happens in multiple restaurants across multiple places. So the true story version of it is a documentary called Don't Pick Up the Phone. That came out in 2022 on Netflix. And it is following the investigation by the real police about how to catch this guy. So that's kind of where the movie ends, is just like all this terrible stuff happens. And it ends with like, and this actually happened. So everybody, you watch the movie and you're like, what the fuck? Like, that was crazy. Yeah. Now, of course, they go through it a lot slower than that because it's a full, like, 2-hour movie, but it gradually escalates and it just gets more and more uncomfortable and you feel terrible for this girl, especially because like, she didn't steal anything. So, but like, nobody believes her. So there is a trial. So this is kind of skipping ahead, but I think to kind of close out Becky's story, which that is not her real name. The actual person this happened to is in the documentary. But in the movie, there is a trial. Becky wins a lawsuit against the company, wins a few $1 million because basically at this point in time when this incident occurs, this had happened in multiple restaurants across the country, and the organization that she worked for, which was McDonald's, knew about it and did not train their employees or warn them about it. So that was how she won a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against McDonald's. Got it. Yes. So that's where the movie compliance ends. And then Don't Pick Up the Phone takes over kind of from like the back end where you're seeing the investigator. And basically that story of Becky, that last girl, that was the last person it happened to. But just by some weird twist of fate, the lead investigator is her neighbor. And so this girl, like the lead investigator is like, I know her. Like, she grew up with my daughter. Like, she's like another child to me. Like, I'm going to catch this fucker. Like, he goes all in. He's like, I am solving this. I'm not letting this happen to another girl. We do find out it also happened to male employees as well. But he is so invested because he personally knew this girl. And he was like, not in my town. He was like not doing it. So this guy is like a hero. And you really should watch the documentary because he's just so heartwarming. And it's just, he's kind of like a big teddy bear, but also like a teddy bear you don't want to fuck with because he's going to hunt you down.
Do we know if this was in multiple states?
Yes. I will get to all the details of that. So this particular case with Becky happened in Kentucky, and that was one of the last cases. The timeline is weird because once the investigation kind of explodes, they find out that this person was making multiple calls in a day. So even though like Becky's case is the last case, it is highly likely there were other cases that same day. But it's kind of like that was his escalation. It kind of went downhill after that. So it was targeting multiple fast food chains across the United States from the late 1990s to the 2000s. So this went on for, I believe, 20 years.
Wow.
Very, very, very long time. Yeah. And so essentially what happens in the case, like I said, Becky sues McDonald's. She does win a lawsuit. Sandra and Sandra's husband also are convicted and sent to jail for sex crimes, essentially, because they did.
Because they did.
And they do admit to, like, we were doing what the guy told us to. Yes, we knew it was wrong. We were scared. You do have some sympathy for them, but it's also like, I think of it this way. This poor girl is like a teenager. She's a grown woman. She's an assistant manager of a fast food chain. Like, you have to have more common sense than that. Like, I'm thinking when the man on the phone is telling you, take her panties off, like, no, that's not how a strip search works, by the way. A strip search.
Yeah, and I'd call back my manager or my person above me, be like, hey, what's the deal with this before I did it?
Right. And then the fact that, like, she kind of just turns over this investigation to her boyfriend because she's got work to do, another bad choice, which he's a little less of a sympathetic character because he does admit, he wasn't going to stop her from having oral sex.
Right.
Like, even though he had his feelings, he was also kind of like, well, I'm not going to say no. So it's like, okay, what the hell? These people need to be the voice of reason and need to be the adults.
Yeah.
The last call was in 2004, but at that point, there had been at least 68 stores in 32 different states that had fallen for this. So We also know that this guy had called other places and they didn't go through with it. And then it did go through to at least 4 lawsuits just with McDonald's. But it did happen in other fast food restaurants. A McDonald's problem, it was all sorts of places. It's a lot to unpack. The way that they found this guy was through a lot of really good detective work. They found out that he was using calling cards. And you can't trace a calling card, but you can trace where you buy the calling card from. And so they were able to trace the calling card to a Walmart. And then they just used security camera footage to track when those cards were purchased and by who.
We have to explain our younger listeners what
a calling card is. I feel like they still know what calling cards are.
Before cell phones or before whatever, when you had to pay either to call on a payphone or you were trying to call long distance, you could pay for it instead of through a phone bill or through money in the thing, through a calling card, which was like a thing you typed in that was like a credit card to pay for it, but it was specifically a calling card.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they do that now, but like with video games where you go and buy a card to like use on Xbox or things like that. Same sort of thing.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's like your Robux.
Yeah, exactly. So the real life person, her name was not Becky, it was Louise. And Louise sued McDonald's for $200 million. And she, after the trial and all this other stuff, she was awarded $5 million in punitive damages and $1.1 million in compensatory damages and expenses. Nice. So did she get her $200 million? No. But she ain't hurting for money.
No.
And she did talk a lot in the trial about the PTSD she has from this and how it's impacted her life. And so it made sense. Now, the ironic thing is which I totally forgot to tell you, the real life manager, her name was Donna Summers.
No.
Not that one.
Does she sing?
Not the singer one, but her name was Donna Summers. She also sued McDonald's because, much like Louise, McDonald's didn't tell her or train her about any of these incidents. So she had no idea that this was something that was happening. And so she sued McDonald's and was initially awarded $1 million in punitive damages and $100,000 in compensatory damages. But then there was an appeal that reduced her award to $400,000. She still got $400,000 for stripping a girl naked, which I have issues with.
Right. But then she also went on trial herself. So
she did.
A whole mess.
And she did end up pleading guilty, and she was placed on probation. I think it was the boyfriend who actually did some physical contact, served some time, but it was not extensive time.
Right.
So that was the real life case, which, like I said, is covered in the movie Don't Pick Up the Phone. And it's just the way that both Compliance, the film, and Don't Pick Up the Phone, they make it very dramatic and they really suck you in. So it's worth a watch, even though you kind of know the end result of it now. But one thing they talk about in the documentary is how someone can become so compliant, like Compliance, the name of the movie.
Right.
Which then rolls over into another movie that, even though it sounds like it's not related, it is, called The Experimenter. Have you seen that?
No.
So it stars Peter Sarsgaard, another Sarsgaard movie, and Winona Ryder. And my favorite, Jim Gaffigan, the comedian.
Okay.
He's in it. Also, Kellen Lutz is in it. Several other people are in it. But it is a movie about Stanley Milgram. Now, you may know that name.
I don't think I do.
Yeah,
maybe I
you
do.
do.
Tell me who it is.
So Stanley Milgram was a psychologist who did experiments on authority. And so he's the one who did that experiment where you had someone coming in for a paid experiment. They knew that they were coming in for that. And they had to continue to turn up the dial to shock someone.
Yep. Yes, I know about that. I remember that one.
That was his experiment. Yeah. So that movie, The Experimenter, also a really good watch. It's definitely very dramatized. Winona Ryder is Milgram's assistant / lover. There's a lot of, John Leguizamo's in it too. Lots of good people in it. So you should definitely watch it. But what I like about the movie, other than all of the drama in the background, it's a little surrealist at times. So it's kind of an interesting watch. But what I like is they go into something that a lot of people don't talk about in the psychology field, was the after effects of this experiment, where people were having negative reactions afterwards because they were not debriefed about the experiments.
Oh, they weren't told that they didn't actually shock these people? Oh,
and so this was back in the 60s, before we had these rules about experimentation and telling people before and debriefing after. So this is kind of where some of this came from. I will say at the time, it just wasn't done. It wasn't like he was purposely, and he says in one of the interviews that they do, he honestly just didn't think about it. It was just like, I did the experiment. At the end, we told them, yep, it was just a test. Nobody was hurt, and just sent them on their way, not thinking that there would be long-term effects. Fun fact, because I'm reading over the cast, it is based on a true story. So a lot of these actors are playing real people. Kellen Lutz plays William Shatner. How did I miss that?
Okay.
The first time around, but the Shat, we loved him. I guess he didn't want to CGI himself into a younger version for that movie. So that movie is also really good. But basically what that experiment is looking at is people's willingness to conform to authority. If someone who you assume is an authority is giving you orders, how far will you go with following those orders? So the question is would you have shocked people if you were in that experiment?
I mean, of course, not being there, I'm saying absolutely not. But, you know, it's tough to tell. It's tough to put yourself in that situation.
Yeah. So maybe I should explain the experiment a little bit better because you knew it, so I skipped ahead. So basically, the experiment was to see how people respond to authority. That was the premise. So they would bring people in. There would be several people in the waiting room. Most of them were plants. And then the one person was the true experimentee. And so they would be brought in and they were told that this was part of a psychological experiment. And their job was to read the person on the other side of a wall or in another room through like a recording device to read them a list of rules and for them to respond to those rules with answers. And it's kind of like problem solving. So if this, then that, what's your answer? But the person on the other room, who the experimentee did not see, they only heard them. They were told they were hooked up to a shock machine. And so you would start off with the minimum amount of shocks. And then the worse their performance got, you're supposed to amp up the shocks, hoping that that electrical shock will kind of force them into answering correctly. So this is what the experimentee is told. True story is no one was being shocked. They were actors in the other room screaming and pretending to be hurt. That's who Jim Gaffigan plays, the guy who's pretending to be hurt, which is hilarious because he's a funny guy. So they did this several times, and basically they found that most people are willing to obey authority and do what they're told, even if they have misgivings. And so when they show this experimentation in the dramatized version of it, many people are like, are you sure? Like, I don't know, I'm not comfortable with this. So they're not like silently obeying authority, but they're not pushing back enough to stop doing it. Now, of course, there were always a few people who were like, no, I'm not doing it. But the majority of people were following the authority. So then what happened at some point was after this experiment became famous, he published about it. Then he was like on all these talk shows. And that was really where it really started to come up. Like, what have you done to these people? Like, what is the long-term effects of essentially the trauma that you've put these people through with this experiment? And that was where things really kind of went sideways for Milgram. He continued to be a psychologist and, you know, wrote a lot of stuff for a while, but that was not really the best part of his career, was the criticism that he received for that.
I feel like it's the one thing we know. Like, it's the one we've all heard of. Like, anybody who
but also
took a psychology class knows about it.
And this was happening at the same time as the Stanford prison experiments and things like that. So there was a lot of psychological experimentation going on around this time because we were learning more about how people respond to certain things in certain settings and learning about human behavior. So that is what the experimenter is about. But how it connects back to this is kind of the same way. This is a real life situation where people were blindly obeying authority because they were told it was a police officer. You have to keep in mind, this was all by phone. They never got a badge number, never saw anyone of authority. You didn't even need to see someone in uniform. And that was really what some of that influence was in those other experiments, where in the Stanford prison experiment, people were in uniform. In the Milgram experiment, the doctors were wearing white coats. So it's kind of making that separation of authority and, you know, a layperson. I think there is something to be said about those nonverbal cues about who's in charge and how we respond to that. But on this, the interesting part of it is there was never any face-to-face interaction with these people.
So just going back to the real case. So when they found out the guy, like, who did this, what was his motivation? He didn't even get to see the end result, right?
It was largely sexual because in almost all the cases, there was some sort of sexual component.
So did he find out about that later? Or was he still on the phone?
He was on the phone when it was happening.
The whole time.
And listening.
Got it. So that was where he was getting from it.
And I think part of it, too, was probably just knowing that he's putting people in these very intimate situations. He didn't necessarily have to see it or to know what was happening, but knowing that he was coercing these people enough to do it.
Got it.
And so this kind of goes into more of the sociological concepts of compliance and conformity. So do you know the difference between the two?
Compliance and conformity. Conformity would be following a group. Compliance doesn't necessarily have to be a group, just following an authority.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of other studies about this type of stuff, but the Milgram experiment was one of the big ones. And then this movie was just kind of a real life example of how that can go so wrong. But if you think about it, the idea of the original idea when we did the whole revamping of our penal system was that it would be for rehabilitation. And that was based on the premise that people would comply and conform.
Right.
But we know it doesn't always work that neatly and that easily. You know, just because I know Joe Bob over there is in prison for the rest of his life because he stole something from the store, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to identify with him and think that I'm going to have that same punishment. There's like several aspects of what makes you want to comply or conform. And part of it is identifying with another person.
So people in the military, though, often, I mean, that's the whole job, right, is complying and
But they're
conforming.
complying with similar people. So it tends to be people of the same age, largely men. They're all there for a similar duty. They're all there for a similar function. And so they have that similarity, which makes you kind of want to stay in line. Now, we know lots of people join the military and don't fall in line and get kicked out. So again, not every person has that mentality to conform or to be a nonconformist. Not everyone is an anarchist either. There's lots of people.
No, there's gray area, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I think it also depends on your individual situation, your own experiences, your belief in what's going on. Part of what I think Milgram kind of a little bit missed out on was these experimentees' belief in the project. Like, did they think like, oh, if I shock this person, they're going to do it right, so it's okay that I shock them? There wasn't necessarily that buy-in to the situation. And so that's where we talk about persuasion versus coercion. Okay. So what do you think the difference is with that?
Persuasion, you're drawing on their emotion or something? Like
with persuasion, basically you're trying to get someone to come over to your side without necessarily guilting them or making them feel uncomfortable. With coercion, you're basically like, do this or else. There's some sort of contingency in coercion.
Okay, got it.
And the most successful people are very persuasive, but they're not necessarily coercing people.
Coercive, right.
And I think that it's the autonomy in it. Like, if someone's very persuasive, they could talk you into joining their side, so then you feel like it's your own idea. Versus coercion, you're being forced to do something by someone.
It's like our cult leaders that we talked about.
And that was why I put this one last, because I feel like it was like that larger concept in my little, it wasn't a trilogy, it was what is a quartology? I just made up a word. I'm going to call it a quartology. I did a quartology. Sounds good, right?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know.
Yeah. But compliance is a response such as submission. So we've talked about sub and dom before in the context of sexual relationships and how someone takes that more submissive role and someone takes the more dominant role. Submission too can just be like, I'm giving in because I want to get this over with, or I want to finish this class, so I'm going to do this silly experiment, things like that, where even with submission, there is some sort of assent on one person's part where they're saying, okay, I'm going to do this. They might not love it, but they're submitting to it. They're allowing it to happen. That's why social psychology is so fun, because there's all these nuances of things that can happen. So some interesting stuff about personalities and compliance. In a study of personality psychology, certain personality disorders are characterized by traits that make individuals more prone to manipulation or coercion of others.
Ooh, I just read that chapter in my studying.
So tell me.
What was it? Hold on.
It's the big three.
Think of the name of it.
It's the three that nobody wants to be.
The bads, there's the
these are all the bads.
The mads and the sads. There's the bads, the mads, and the sads.
This is There's kind of one of each.
There's the mads, the bads, and the sads is the way it was in my book. And
it's not how it was taught to me, but I like
the clustered. That's the way they like put them.
Well, people love to throw this term around. So you should definitely know one.
Well, are you talking about the people who are more susceptible or the people who are more likely
to... The personality disorders. Which one is one that we always throw around to people? There's two. There's two that a lot of people like to say.
There's antisocial and there's...
You got one of the three.
I can't think of it. I know.
There's another one that people like to claim that the president has. I'm not saying that he does.
Narcissist.
There you go.
Yes. Yep.
And then this one is often people get the definition confused with borderline, but it's not borderline.
Yes, that's the other one I was thinking of.
Histrionic personality.
Histrionic. Yes. See, if it was a multiple choice, I'd know it, but my brain couldn't come up.
So
histrionic, that's what I was trying to think of the first time.
So someone with histrionic personality disorder, they kind of want to be the center of attention, want everyone to be attached to them. And that was how they build their relationships, by gaining attention and trying to influence others. But they also have this constant need for reassurance and kind of that need to have people close to them, which can then make it difficult to sustain a relationship with someone who's histrionic.
Yeah.
Narcissistic, inflated self-importance, hypersensitivity to criticism, sense of entitlement. Those are the kind of the basics of narcissism. There's different types of narcissism. That's not necessarily in the DSM, but we know, there's the bad narcissist versus the good narcissist, all this kind of stuff. And then antisocial personality disorder, it does not mean that people are antisocial and they don't want to talk to others. People misuse that term all the time. That is not what antisocial personality disorder is. Antisocial personality is similar to narcissism as in that the person has a grandiose sense of self-worth. They have shallow affect, little remorse or empathy for others, and they typically enjoy conning or manipulating others to bow to their own wishes.
They're the very manipulative ones.
But it's very intentional. Like they know exactly what they're doing.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that is how they form relationships, through that sort of coercion, manipulation, conning of people. And that's really the only way they know how to build relationships. Mm-hmm. People with personality disorder in general can be somewhat difficult to work with in therapy because they tend to like the way they are. Like the way they are is adaptive. That being said, a lot of these people, you're not necessarily born this way. It's a lot of influence of what you've been through. There tends to be a lot of trauma with a lot of these folks in their background. And that's kind of how they have this odd sense of relationships and interactions with others, because they necessarily haven't been treated very well themselves. So it's almost like an adaptive function. Like, I'm not going to let somebody hurt me again, so I'm going to be the one in control.
Right.
So those are the big three personalities that tend to use more of coercion to get people to comply with them or to manipulate people. Doesn't mean that everyone with those disorders has it. It's just they're more likely, just given the way that they view relationships and their role in those relationships. Lots of things can go into compliance. And we were talking about this before about in a group versus one-on-one. So this is an experiment I talked about a couple weeks ago with the line. And if everybody in the group says the short line is the same as the long line, most people are going to go along with the group, even though you may know that it's not true. So that's kind of, that group think that we talk about is everybody tends to fall to the same opinion, even though you might, if you were by yourself, you might not necessarily think that same. But do you know what a construsal is? If you construe something wrong.
Well, when you say construsal, I was like, is that a dessert? Like,
yes, it's delicious. It's got lots of icing on it. Usually it's stuffed with fruit.
So someone who, a construe?
A person's construsal. So when you construe something, what are you doing?
You're changing it. I don't know.
You're interpreting a situation in a certain way.
Right.
So someone's construsal, or the way that they interpret a situation, can affect how they respond, i.e. with compliance or conformity or things like that. So, for example, if you're in a situation, especially with a group, and you think that if you go along with everyone, you're going to get some sort of reward or some sort of praise, you're more likely to do that, versus if you know everybody in the group is going to get in trouble for that opinion, you might not be as apt to conform with the group.
Right.
There's also situational factors. So any sense of danger, sense of desperation, things like that might skew the way that someone conforms or does not. There's a lot of words in here that I don't know. Do you know what a homonym is? I swear I didn't make it up.
Isn't that a word? Like a homonym?
No, not a homonym. It's HOMINEM, homonym.
Ad hominem?
Yes.
Like when you're like an argument that's ad hominem?
Yes, there you go. I didn't know that reference, so good for you. So parts of the reason that people comply are for lots of reasons. Accuracy. So if you think that everybody else is right, you want to be right as well. And so you're going to go along with the group because you want to be correct, even if your own opinion may not be the same correctness. So that's what the lines we were talking about before. The goal of affiliation. If you want to fit in with the group, you're going to go along with the group says. So you don't feel like you're the outsider. You don't feel like you're the odd one out. So those are two reasons why someone may be conforming to what's going on.
I wonder if age group wise, I would say like middle school to teen years, you're more likely to sort of go along to fit in. And then as you become more yourself, then you would be more likely to stand up, to disagree.
I mean, in general, those adolescent years are when you're coming to discover and define who you are as a person. So I think you are more likely to kind of conform or go along with certain groups to see what feels original to yourself, what feels authentic. And so that's why there's a lot of that social experimentation, things like that in those teenage years to kind of see, okay, is this who I am or is this who I am? Like I get to choose now.
Right.
Where am I going to be? So you do have a little bit more ownership in that sort of thing, but it is part of why a bunch of kids are now all of a sudden goth when they weren't goth 5 years ago. You're like, I want to try it out. I want to see if it's what I like. And some people do like it, and that becomes a part of their identity later on. Other people are like, yeah, it was a phase, it was fine. So it's part of that natural developmental stage of differentiation is what we call that. So you're differentiating yourself from your family or yourself from being the child of so-and-so. Now you are an individual. So some things we discussed before that have to do with compliance. I'm not going to go super into them. We talked about the ASH experiments. Those were with the lines. We talked about Stanley Milgram. We briefly talked about the Stanford prison experiment. I'm not going to go too in depth because I think eventually I'll probably cover it. There's been a bunch of random movies about it. None of them have really been that great, but I might dig one up and do that. It's because I feel like a lot of people have heard about it, but don't necessarily know all of the details about it. It says there's a 2010 film called The Experiment, not The Experimenter, that tells a version of the Stanford Prison Project. At some point, I know Brad Pitt had signed on to produce a version of the Stanford Prison Experiment. I don't know if it actually happened. There definitely was one movie that was going to have a lot of big names in it that I believe got filmed, but I don't know if it ever got released. So I'll have to stir it up. But there's definitely a couple of films. And then you can also find some of the original videos are out there about that. The Nuremberg trials, we briefly talked about that. And that was really when we started to look as the entire world. It wasn't just the U.S., it was mostly the Allied powers. So that was Great Britain, France, Soviet Union, and U.S. Yes, we were allied with the Soviet Union.
We were.
At one point. Believe it or not, folks. We're not making it up.
Our bros back then.
It was looking at what occurred during the Holocaust and how to kind of make clear divisions between what is experimentation, what is medical treatment versus what is just cruel and inhumane punishment. And so that is really what the Nuremberg trials focuses on. There's a movie about that just came out called Nuremberg. I don't know if I'm going to cover it. It's not really my thing, but who knows? Maybe I'll change my mind. Okay, I think we covered a bunch of that. Yeah, so that's what I got about compliance. Definitely a good movie. You should definitely watch it.
I mean, where do you think I think we all think we wouldn't be compliant, but where do you think in reality you are?
In general, I feel like I'm too anxious to be much of a rule breaker.
But I don't know.
You say yes,
I guess it depends on what it is.
Yeah, it depends on the circumstance that you're in. So I don't think anyone can say like, oh, I would never do that, because you never know until you're in a situation.
Know. Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely food for thought. I mean, there's been tons of experiments and tons of case studies and tons of things about like bank robberies and what like the hostages do, or like, I mean, there's all these different stories about how different situations people would act, but until you're in them, you don't know.
Yes.
How you would be. Like, isn't there one where like they made the people in the place do stuff to other hostages? I'm sure there's one out there.
Yes. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
But like things like that, like where like until you're in that situation, you just don't know how you would react.
Well, and that's how a lot of those cult things work is once you gain favor with the leaders, now you're responsible for punishing or keeping the lower ones in line. And so it's, you do these things for your own self-preservation, but then it is harming others.
Yeah.
Or we see that a lot.
Fight the power.
Yeah. Or we see that a lot, unfortunately, with sex trafficking, where someone gets trafficked in and then they're stuck and now they're recruiting others and they don't necessarily want to. But yeah, I think people can do very bad things, but still be good people if you're in a situation where you feel like you don't have a choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, people, don't be compliant.
I mean, be like compliant with like traffic rules.
Yes.
And
like follow, major like ethical
doctor's
and moral,
orders about like your health and stuff like that. But like,
yes, actually, what's funny is the word compliance I write all the time.
About medication compliance, non-compliance with treatment, things like that. Which that's another part of it too. Is I think the nuances of that in the medical care system. Sometimes people are non-compliant because they can't be compliant. They don't have the money for their meds, or they don't know how to do these things. But we call it compliance when there's more factors to it.
I think so, and we're moving towards trying to use things like shared decision making is a way of doing things. But anyway, it's funny as we're talking all about this word that we actually use all the time.
Yes, we do. I don't use it that much, but I try to be mindful of it just because of the other things that can get in the way of compliance.
Right, of course.
And then I just feel like compliance, even though when we're doing the true definition, it is someone's choice to conform, we know that is not always the reality of life.
Right, right. Interesting.
Yes.
All right. So thank you for listening to Medical Media Mixer.
The perfect cocktail. Cheers.
Cheers.
Your drink is empty.
It is.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Medical Media Mixer podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps others find the show. Want to keep the conversation going? Follow us on social media. We're at Medical Media Mixer Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and on Pinterest, the Medical Media Mixer board.
If you'd like to support the show and help us grow, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Medical Media Mixer Podcast. And on Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Medical Media Mixer Podcast. If you have a topic idea, feedback, or just want to say hi, send us an email at medicalmediamixer@gmail.com. You can also stream all of our episodes and find more info on our website, medicalmediamixer.podbean.com. We're available on all major podcast platforms, so no matter where you listen, we're there. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep mixing medicine and media.